For the base of the project, I'm starting with a piece of medium weight chipboard, again that is 12 inches by 12 inches, and I want to round off some of the corners. So what I've done is I've marked on 3 of the corners, I've marked a place in that is 3 inches from each side. Just mark that in, and then I've set my compass to 3 inches between the points, and on 3 of these corners I'll just make a radius and we'll cut that radius out. That will do on 3 of the corners. And then for the 4th corner down here, what we're going to do is, again, leave our compass at 3 inches, but put your point of your compass at the point down here so that we're going to have a kind of inset curve here. So I'll make those cuts and then come back. So I've made those 4 cuts now, and down here I just want to ease these 2 corners, and you can set your compass for some kind of radius. I'm just going to use the inside dimension of a roll of score tape and just use that to kind of line up and round these corners off. And this has this is about a 3-inch circle, so a radius of 1 1/2 would also create this if you're not using score tape, or any kind of radius, just to ease these corners a little bit. I'm just using my big Tim Holtz scissors here. You could easily just use a craft knife as well. So the project is going to be oriented this way, with the Acorn house sitting back in this area, little path out here, the leaves on either side. So I'll be back for the next section in a minute. To make the support for the stems of the leaves, we're going to make a little 4-sided thing that kind of goes like this and holds the dowel in the middle. So we have 2 sizes because we need a larger one for the stem that has the 2 leaves on it. And these are, the larger one is 2 inches across at the bottom, and then it is 1.5 inches tall on one end. So I'm just using my mat to measure that. And it is 3/4 of an inch tall on the other end. And on this 1 1/2 inch tall end, where instead of just connecting the dots here, we're going to come in straight for 3/8 of an inch, and then we'll connect the dots. I think you can see the shape we're trying to make right there. So now I'll just connect these dots. And there, so we need 4 of that size, and then we can draw a line that comes in 1/4 of an inch from the edge, and those are the ones we'll use for our 2-leaf stem. Now for the 1-leaf stem, these are going to be a little bit shorter. These are 1 5/8 inch across the bottom, but other than that it's the same. So will come, I've got this one already cut, I think, at 1 5/8. No, it's 1.5 inch tall. So we'll measure our 1 5/8 inch here. That's the width. And once you have one, you can come and use that as a template for the others. Good thing I did, because I only measured 1 3/8 and not 1 5/8. So there we go. 1 5/8 across, and then we'll come up 3/4 of an inch. And again, we want to come on, it's 1 1/2 inches tall, and we'll come in, we'll leave that flat for 3/8 of an inch, and then just cut and connect the dots so that we have a little sloped surface here. And then we'll make our 1/4 inch line. So they both go together the same way. I'm just going to make the larger one here on camera for you. So what we want to do is, and I've got the dowel, 1/4 inch dowel here, just to make sure I'm making it big enough. But what happens is that you'll use that 1/4 inch line and line up the next piece on the outside of that line so that you have enough room for your dowel to go inside of there. Then I've just cut a few little pieces of joining strip here. I'm going to use these in combination with some wet glue to make sure I get a good join here. So I'll just put a bead of wet glue on the outside of that line. And then before you stick down the joining strip, I would just take it onto your mat and make sure everything is straight there. And then give that a burnish. Now as you move around, I would just kind of keep testing to make sure you've got enough room for your dowel. You want a snug fit, but not, you know, that it needs to go in there. So just keep coming around, you know, adding glue and another strip to the outside of that line until you've made your little four-sided support piece. So here are my completed support pieces, and you can see that the stem fits in there nice and snugly on both. So these will help give some extra support to the two leaf stems. So now we're ready to start marking out for the placement of all of our objects on our base, and we start with the base that we just cut out and then cut out a second one with the same dimensions as on the outside. So I've already done that part, and then it's time to decide where you want things to go. So what I have done is I've drawn a diagonal line through the center of the base, and the doors are going to be aligned with that center. And I've decided to hold the house back about 1 3/4 inches from each side, but you can put yours on and, you know, if you want to do something different, then, you know, you'll have to adjust other measurements as well. And then the tall leaf I'm going to have coming in, and I haven't arranged all the little steps properly yet, but I think it's going to come in about in this location. And so I measured that, and the center of the stem is 2.5 inches in from both of the flat sides here. And then the mushroom lamppost I'm going to have about here, and then the other leaf is going in over on this side, and I've measured in 1 5/8 inch from this, from whatever you would call this back angle side, and 3 1/8 from the flat here. So when I say from the flat, I just take my ruler and I'm lining it up with that flat edge, and to the center of this circle that I made, it's 3 1/8 inch, and then from this side it's 1 5/8 inch from this flat side. Now, so for the mushroom, from the center line here, I've measured out 2 inches to the outline of the stalk, and 3/4 of an inch in from the flat edge. So from this center line, 2 inches, and that's where, let me take off the cap and then you can see, I think. So from the center line, this is a 2-inch wide ruler, to the outside of the stalk there, and then 3/4 of an inch in on this side. So that I just drew a circle around that. So that is the placement of my objects. And then the majority of the base is going to be 3/4 of an inch thick, but where the front walk comes down, I'm going to make that just be 1/4 of an inch thick. And so in order to do that, I've marked, again using the straight center line as a reference, I've marked a point 2 3/4 inches in from the point of the curve here. So this, and then I drew a straight line across like this, 2 3/4 inches up from here. And then on either side of the center line, I've drawn both a 1-inch line and then a 1 3/8 inch line, so that I have, I'll get a marker here and we'll see what it looks like. So this is my line that is 2 3/4 inches up from the base, and then from the center line, 1 inch, and then 1 3/8 inch, and then the same thing on the other side, 1 inch, and then 1 3/8 inch. So what I'm going to do is cut on all of these lines here. So we'll want to reserve these pieces that we've cut out, and I marked left and right so that they would all fit back in here together. So I'll put these over here to the side. And now the circle we're going to cut out the circle that the mushroom lamppost is going to go in, and I'll just take my time and do that with a sharp craft knife. Now you may recall that I said that the majority, in fact all that we have left here, the thickness of that base is going to be 3/4 of an inch. And because when we made these stem supports, they are taller than 3/4 of an inch, they're actually going to come up through the base. So what I'm going to do is take just a piece of short dowel and line that up with the circle that I made and put that on there. And then I'm going to just mark to cut some channels that these support pieces can come through. And I'm going to cut them a little bit wider than the 1/16 of an inch because I don't want to make my life really hard getting them in, but pretty close, and just give it some pressure and trace around it. And mark your ends. And then we can just kind of cut out this cross that we've created. So I'll do that for both this tall stem and for the short stem that goes over here. Now we want to attach our little stem supports to the bottom of our project base. I've already done this little one, and let me show you how I did it. I slipped the stem support through the top of the project base a little bit, and then just put a little bead of glue along all of these edges. Okay. Then we'll just fit this one over the one we already have glued in place over here. And making sure we keep all of our edges lined up. We'll go ahead and put some pressure on this second one, and I'm just kind of lifting the top of the base up so it won't get stuck in any glue overflow. And then I'll just put some pressure on there until it dries. And now that the glue has dried on our stem supports, I just want to take a marker and outline these cutouts. These will be the edges for where we will put our 3/4 inch supports. So here we have the project base, and this is the bottom of it, and as you can see I've done some preliminary work. One of the things I've done is make little triangular sections that fit inside each of the corners of the leaf supports, and let me show you how I made those. I took a strip of 3/4 inch medium weight chipboard that is 3.5 inches long, and then I scored it with my craft knife at 1 inch, and then the next space is 1.5, which would be at the 2.5 inch mark. And then this will fold into a triangle, and it's not perfectly a right triangle, but it's pretty close. And then I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on one of the edges. And then I've cut a piece of cardstock that's about 1/2 inch wide by 4 inches long. And just to give some support to this piece, I'm going to wrap this strip around it. That way, if any of the scoring cuts we made go all the way through, it will still have stability and strength. And then I'll just give that a little burnish. And then you can see here I've got one more place. I just kind of put them probably about a quarter of an inch from the stem structure strips. Just putting a little white glue on the bottom. Okay. Then over here in the front, I took some 3/4 inch strips, and just where we had made the outline for the part that's cut out, I just framed that with 3/4 inch strips. I held it back a 1/16 of an inch from the edge of the project here. And then over here, to go around to give some support around the mushroom stem, I've just cut, I think these are 1 5/8 inch long. Yes, so I cut 3 pieces 1 5/8 inch long, just kind of abut the corners as I went around. And this piece I made just about an inch longer, just so that there would be some support out here near the edge. Guys to the inside. And then before we put this on, I'm going to run a bead of glue right along the edge and on the end of this previous strip. Starting back here on this straight, just kind of pick it up or do whatever you need to do in order to make sure that that edge stays nice and flush to the edge of the base. And then just kind of work your way around the corner here. With these relief cuts, if this one area is a little close to the stem support, but with all these little relief cuts, you can work around it without a problem. And I just need to pick it up and make sure it's staying where I want it. Once it looks good, just come in on the inside with your bone folder and give that a good burnish. And snip off a little piece of joining strip and reinforce this join that's in between these two pieces over here. So now that we've got these strips in, then it's a matter of, we just need to put some extra support in here. So I'll probably cut this off a little bit there, probably run a couple this way, some this way. You don't have to get really carried away, but just so that, every cut, I wouldn't go more than about 1.5 inches probably without having something in there. So I'm going to cut some pieces, and they don't have to be straight or anything. I mean, this one, you could leave it its full 12 inches and just don't try to make it straight across there. None of this will be seen, of course, so do whatever you want just to give some extra stability down here in the bottom. So I'll do that and then I'll be back. So I think you can see that I have filled in here with a lot of pieces of the 3/4 inch wide medium weight chipboard, just kind of here and there. Well, probably there's some bigger spots here, but I think this will have enough stability for the weight of the project. It's not that heavy. I do have it a little concentrated in this area where the Acorn house will go. And the next thing is, as you recall, we cut out of the top several pieces, and this is one of them. This is the piece that's 2 inches wide. And what I've done here is just built up with 1/4 inch strips, just butting them up equal to the edges here, and just put a couple stringers. Now I did make sure to stay a 1/16 of an inch away from this front edge to allow for the wrapping of the border around the front edge here. And so then this will just get centered and put right into here on the base and glued down. So while all of this glue is setting up, let's do one more step on the top piece that fits on here. So just to make it so that the top will fit on nicely on those edges, I've cut some straight pieces that are about a 1/4 inch wide, and they are the length of the straight edges here, and I've numbered them so that I wouldn't get too confused. Now remember, these are going to go on the bottom side, so we'll flip here. This is side 1. So hold them back a 1/16 of an inch and just glue little straightaway strips along here, a 1/16 of an inch from the edge, and that'll help it fit on better to the other portion once we're ready to put it on. So let's do a little dry fitting here. And one thing I noticed that I didn't account for when I made the strips that are going on the inside of the top here is that they need to be notched for any place that one of the, let me take this off, anytime one of these intersects here, these strips will have to be notched in order to allow that support to go through there. So just mark them and then come back and notch it out, or if you've watched this before doing yours, you can plan for that accordingly. So the dry fit looks good, so I think all we have to do now is we'll put glue on all the 3/4 inch edges. Don't put any glue on these the stem supports here that are angled, but all the rest of this can get glue, and then we'll put the top down on there and let it set up to dry. To finish off the walkway here, we're going to put a slanted piece in and then just kind of join it with some of our cardstock joining strips. Now I've cut a strip that is a 1/16 of an inch bigger than 5/8 of an inch, and I'm just going to kind of fit it in there and make a couple little tick marks for where it needs to be cut so that it matches up with the top edge and this bottom edge. And then I'm just going to use my scissors to cut that. You could, of course, cut it with a craft knife or anything you want. And then it's just going to go in here at an angle. I'm just checking to make sure that was good. Yes, it is. And so then I've just cut a couple of little cardstock joining strips here. That just makes a little dip for the path to the Acorn house there. So the next thing we want to do is just to cover up these. I made them taller than the base for stability, and also I decided I wanted to have the ground not just be all flat all around the Acorn house. And so for this one over here, I've cut a circle of lightweight chipboard, and the radius is 1 3/4, and I just cut a circle in the center. It's a little bit bigger than a 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm just going to put my spare dowel down in here and wrap this around until all the edges are flush, and then just make a little tick mark about where, or you can even just draw a line so that it would be easier of where that should overlap. And then for this one over here, I've used a little bit bigger circle. This one, the radius is 2 1/4, and again, we put our stick in the center here, wrap it around until all of our edges are flat, and draw a line. And I'll just fasten that and then run a bead of glue all around the edge, and that'll give some good stability and also some change in the terrain here for the house. And now the last thing that we need to do is make the finishing strip that goes along this edge. You might want to make a pattern first. One thing to keep in mind is that when you're making the curves that are going in this direction, convex curves, the slits will go on the outside, and then as you move into here, where it's a concave curve, you'll have to make the little scoring slits on the inside so that it'll be able to make that kind of back and forwards kind of curve. So I think I'll probably just go for it and then see how it goes. And here is what my finished front piece looks like fitted inside of here. So that is the base construction ready for decoration.